the number of cool and exciting features of Schema in V4 is just like unreal.
Yeah.
Like
It's a whole new world, the V4, that once you try it, you say, okay, what I have been using up to now.
yeah, I mean, like it's just, yeah, I mean, a good example is like in the AI packages, one of the common gripes and feedback things that I would get from folks is that when you declare a schema, there was no way for us to let you know ahead of time that the JSON schema that schema would get transformed to would be invalid per the provider. Like, for example, most providers don't accept like tuple representations, or there's specific restrictions on like filters and things like that. So for V4, Julio wrote a set of helpers that basically for the AI modules that allow me to transform under the hood the schema that you give me into a format that's compatible by the provider, and like taking any filters and things like that that are not valid per the provider and shoving it into this description of like those properties, send it to the provider, let them generate the object, send it back, and then transform it backwards into the object that I want. So like it's just like a really small example of like what V4 schema can do, but like
another one that usually people ask about is, I have a schema with hundreds of properties. I want to make all of them optional. Right now, it's like a madness to do, because you need to like manually picking them and now mark them as optional or whatever. And with V4, you basically do your schema.map fields and you provide schema.optional key. And now you have a new schema that has all of the keys optional, which is like amazing. That's one of probably the use cases I have most heard of.
Yeah, the ability to transform schemas has evolved substantially. And like I said, we'll probably do another, maybe like the next office hours or a future office hours on just like schema stuff, because there's so much to chat about.
So as we mentioned, like Effect schema got like a huge rewrite, and you'll see like a lot of comparisons with Volleyball Zol or whatever. One thing that you have to keep in mind when seeing those like comparison is like, first, the features they provide, because like some of the libraries that Effect schema is compared against just do validation and that's it. Some of them even do not do like two-way encoding and decoding, but just like validation and that's it. So that's indeed something that makes Effect schema like heavier and slower. But the other thing that I also to point out is that like some of those libraries, I think latest version of Thought, for example, basically use an optimization where they use like the new function constructor in order to construct a faster way to parse and decode objects, for example. And that's indeed faster, but the issue is that there are some environments where arbitrary JS code execution, like new function or eval, is banned. And so those kind of libraries won't work in that environment. Whereas with Effect schema, we try, again, Effect tries to run wherever. So initially, we won't take that approach, even though we know that's indeed faster in the way that works, but we point mostly on like working everywhere. But that does not exclude that in the future there may be some experimentation about that. But at the moment, that's why you see like the performance comparison and you see the difference. And just wanted to point out that, and I think that if someone has other questions.
I think Mike mentioned in my Twitch chat that they do work, but they need fallbacks to do so. And the design goals of Schema are also different than some of these other frameworks. Like Schema also integrates with Effect natively, so asynchronous transformations, for example, are possible without having to do a lot of extra work with Schema. Asynchronous filters, I think, are supported in V4 too. So yeah, the V4 schema is definitely much lighter than V3, but it's still going to be the design goals and the features that we're trying to support are slightly different than some of these other libraries. In particular, I think that for Zod and Valibot and a lot of these other libraries, codec type decoding and encoding. When I say codec, I mean like being able to decode and encode was, I don't want to say an afterthought, but it was. It was added after the fact. Whereas with Schema, we were focused on production use cases, and so being able to both decode data coming into your application and encode data that's going to be going out of your application were two core design goals, even from V3. So anyway, that's why, these comparisons are not necessarily always the best. But listen, Zod and Valibot and the other libraries that are out there certainly all have their use cases. Schema just has its own set of, yeah.
Like always, it
Does
depends on
affect-
what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. It depends. Classic software engineering excuse. It depends.